I'm having a wonderful, wonderful conversation already with Sara Sant'Ambrogio, cellist. She is going to be playing with the Santa Barbara Symphony here in a couple of weeks. Those would be Saturday and Sunday performances by the Santa Barbara Symphony near Cabaretti conducting May 17th, Saturday evening at 8 o'clock, Sunday, did I get that right? May 18th at 3
Yes.
p.m. So 17th at 8, 18th at 3. That'll throw you all off. Everybody in Santa Barbara knows this. The Santa Barbara Symphony does weekend pairs at the amazing Granada Theater. It's quite the opulent little opera house here in Santa Barbara these days.
I love that theater.
Big remodeling. It's pretty sweet. And of course, I guess it's no surprise she's going to be playing the Dvorak Cello Concerto, the greatest work in the whole cello repertoire, I think. Maybe Rococo is another big one, Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about that. Sara is a Grammy Award winner. Wanted to throw that out for. Let's start there for just a little brief one because I find it very interesting. All I know from doing my little research today for you is you played Bernstein, the arias and barcarolles. What else
Yes.
was on that? Was it a CD? What's the story of this Grammy Award?
It was a CD for Koch Records, and it was all Bach rolls and arias, all by Bernstein, and it was arranged for voice, soprano, and also tenor, and piano and cello. And they were beautiful, beautiful. I mean, Bernstein has such a lovely way with melody.
Yes.
He and Gershwin, they just were melody meisters.
Yeah. He is a great master. I love Bernstein's music. Maybe one day he'll really, really, really be appreciated. I'm thinking of the symphonies, all three. Well, Kaddish, but the other two. And so anyway, enough of that. I wanted to just get clear. Grammy Award. What was that? What year was that?
That was, gosh, I get confused because I've been nominated so many times, and the only times that I win is when I don't go. And I remember it was like 96 or something like that, and then 97 I went and then didn't win.
It's the way of things, isn't it? Okay,
Exactly.
let's go back a little bit. In fact, quite a little bit, because you told me before we started a story that really is quite amazing. I'm always interested in how come, what is it? Because this is a hard profession, classical music,
Sure.
and it takes really kind of a maniac. Or else a person that's living in a family that goes back generations. Give me that story about the Sant'Ambrogio. And by the way, your dad is John Sant'Ambrogio. Santa Barbarans know him. He's on the adjunct faculty teaching cello at Westmont College. I had a wonderful private dinner with him, a couple years ago. Anyway, sweet guy. Give me this story. What is it like? Give me the history of this family that you did earlier, and what is it like to be? Did you have any choice? Go. It's your turn.
Yeah, well, I always say it was either destiny or density that made me become a cellist. My grandparents were both professional musicians. In fact, the best man at my grandparents' wedding was Joseph Gingle, the great violin pedagogue who was Josh Bell's teacher, and he actually played in a string quartet with my grandfather. And my grandmother was a phenomenal concert pianist and a protege actually of Arthur Rubinstein's. And so my father had played both violin and piano, but really didn't find his footing until he switched to the cello, an instrument that neither of his parents played. So when I started out on piano at 2, which I really enjoyed, but I really wanted the cello. By 4, I wanted the cello. And my father was very hesitant to have me play the cello because he worried that I would feel overshadowed by him like he had maybe felt with his parents. Little did he know how headstrong I was. And I also was like this skinny little kid. And so he just never thought that these hands would grow out to be E.T.'s fingers, And so they kept, at 4, I think they gave me a violin, but I sounded like a cat in heat. And so that was not a very successful experiment. And I traded that to my sister, who's now a professional violinist, for a good book that had really pretty pictures in it. And then when I was 6, my mom took me to the shoe store for my first pair of school shoes. And the guy who measured my feet said, "Whoa, she has huge feet for her size." So my mom just mentioned it at dinner that night. And my dad said, "Really? How big are her feet?" And my mom said, "They're bigger than her older sister's feet, who's 2 years older than her." And my dad said, "Hold your hand up." And I held my hand up, and he goes, "Wow, you're totally going to have big enough hands for the cello." And so he gave me a cello at 6, and I was just thrilled. And I studied with my father up until basically about a year before. When I was 15, I told him that I really didn't think he was disciplined enough to give me lessons on a weekly basis, because he would give me lessons like once every 3 weeks, and they would go on for like 4 hours, and then I wouldn't have another lesson for like 3 or 4 weeks, which was great, because it made me really become self-disciplined.
And it wasn't like he wasn't busy. I mean, he was
I know. He was principal cello
cellist
of the St. Louis Symphony.
Yeah, exactly.
He had a string quartet that he was recording with. He was running a music camp. He was a busy bee. And so I studied with a wonderful Russian cellist, Savili Schuster, for a year. And then Sasha Schneider heard me play Bach and invited me to Carnegie Hall to play when I was 15. And I then played for David Sawyer at his apartment when I was in New York, who invited me to go to Curtis to finish my high school diploma. And that's how I started. And then I went to study with Leonard Rose at Juilliard, who had been my father's teacher.
Oh.
And so it was like coming home to study with my grandfather in a way. It was so wonderful. I was so blessed to have been able to study with him the last 2 years of his life. And so I'm so lucky that I started out early so I could get there before he passed.
At what time? Just to be here a little bit longer. At what point did? Hang on. We'll get past it. Passing aeroplanes or hippodromes or something. Anywho, at what point? And let's not spend too much longer at this on your tiny youth, because there's a whole lot more going on. But just the idea of what was I going to say? Something about at what. You're raised in this amazingly musical family. You talk about hitting the piano at 2, crazy. At what point did everybody start in St. Louis? Did people start paying attention before everybody really grabbed you? To Curtis and then to Juilliard. And what was anything going on? What was that about in your youth in St. Louis?
Well, I think that pretty quickly when I switched to cello, it became really apparent that this was really naturally my voice. And I also had been incredibly shy. I grew up in a kind of tough neighborhood in St. Louis, and Nellie, the hip-hop artist, went to the same middle school that I went to. And people were getting, I got my nose broken twice by being, punched. And people were being knifed in the bathroom. And so I was very shy. Very, very painfully shy. And the cello has such a wonderfully human voice. And so the second that I started playing it, I just felt like it was my voice. And I could say everything I wanted to say on the instrument. So very quickly, my parents noticed how incredibly emotional and musical I was on the cello. And people used to say when I was like 9 that I sounded like an old Russian Jew, because I seemed to have such pathos in my playing. But it was just, I could pour everything that I was feeling into the instrument. And plus, I think because it was big,
I was going to say that.
It really made me feel powerful. And I was kind of a very skinny little girl with these massive hands and feet. And I hadn't realized yet that I had a big mouth. And so the cello made me feel so powerful and so big, and it just felt like it really, I used to dream about it, and it was a character, and he was like my protector, and I used to sleep with it, I just, cuddle it, it was really, I knew really quickly that this was just something really special. Even now, my husband is jealous of my cello because he knows that always it's the first thought in my mind is, if everything's going well with the cello, I'm just full of joy and incredibly happy. And if something's not going right, I'm just so distracted. I'm just not, you know.
So let me catch up on this. So first of all, cello, you can fend off daggers and
Yes.
oncoming gangsters pretty well with that big instrument. And also, were the Titanic to be sinking, it's called "Fend for Yourselves." Me and the cello, we're out of here.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yes, I was once on tour in Japan, and I was in bed after a concert. My cello was standing up in front of the window, and I had kept the drapes open because I could see Mount Fuji out my window, and it was so beautiful in the moonlight. And all of a sudden, a earthquake hit, and I noticed because I saw the cello going like this, and I jumped up, grabbed the cello, and opened up the door and stood in the doorway because I was on like the 18th floor, and I had forgotten my purse, my passport, but also my clothes. So I was standing naked in the doorway with my cello. My cello was safe, you know.
Ooh, what a publicity photo! My God.
Thank God nobody was there. Everybody was worried about the earthquake, and they weren't thinking about taking photos.
Let's get back to if I may get back to the Santa Barbara Symphony concert coming up. You're going to be playing the Dvorak Concerto. I'm going to give the phone number for tickets, and this little interview is seen all over Southern California by my subscribers, and I hope I always push this. You know, it's such a gorgeous city, Santa Barbara, just to come up for the evening or for that Sunday afternoon on the 18th of May. But also on the program is Shostakovich number 5. You can't go wrong there.
I love that piece.
And a piece by Noam Sharif, apparently a very, very famous Israeli composer. Akida, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, and it's a very, very interesting piece written to memorialize the, unfortunately, terribly assassinated Prime Minister Rabin. So that should be a very interesting and very emotional evening. Now, you won the Tchaikovsky competition.
Yeah.
What was that on? What was that on the Rococo variations or what?
That was well, the final round is 2 concertos, and one of them, of course, is Tchaikovsky for whichever instrument you are, and so it's Tchaikovsky Rococo variations, and it was just such a fun piece to play. And then the other piece was Krennikov. He wrote a concerto for the finals. Krennikov was the head of the Soviet composers like Politburo, basically, and he made life miserable for Shostakovich.
Yes.
So it was very interesting for me. It was very interesting. It was a lesson in forgiveness, and because I just am a huge fan of Shostakovich, and I love his cello concertos. I love his symphonies. The Fifth Symphony is one of my favorite symphonies, and I had read his memoirs and the ones that were banned in the Soviet Union. And so when I knew I was playing this Krennikov, I knew how hard he had made Shostakovich's life, and so I was really fascinated about the idea that I might meet him. And then when I met him, you know, he was an old man who was just thrilled that somebody at my level of talent was playing his concerto, you know, and it was interesting at such a young age to sort of see that, you know, and to realize that, you know, evil comes with many faces.
Beautifully put, and also, sorry. Hang on.
I don't know what that is.
those are the bad guys trying to break up our interview. Hope it'll die down. Yeah, you're in Nashville, by the way. I want to tell everybody because that's part of the fun of Skype. I'm in Santa Barbara. You're in Nashville. I mean, I've spoken to people in Phnom Penh. It's wonderful. I forgot. I'm going to give the phone number for everybody in Southern California that wants to come up for the weekend of the 17th and 18th of May. It's in a couple of weeks from this interview to hear the Santa Barbara Symphony play Shostakovich, Sharif, and the Dvorak Cello Concerto with Sara Sant'Ambrogio. The telephone number in Santa Barbara is area code 805-899-2222. That is the Granada Theater box office, and I hope many of you will, you know, take the opportunity to come up to Santa Barbara. So we've done a little history. We've done a lot of stuff about your father John and the training. He must be proud as a peacock.
He is. He's so cute. He every time he sees me, he now grabs me for a lesson. Which is so cute. Yeah. And because I saw him around at Christmas time, and every single day he would say, "Coco, I just want to play this one thing for you. I've been listening to your recording of the Chopin, and how do you get that slide? It's just so heartbreaking, you know." And then we go through, we work on it, and then they'll call me afterwards and go, "So I've been thinking about that slide. I've been working on it, and I've gotten a lot better." And it's just it's wonderful because it's true. He's getting better.
And as you know, I think could he possibly be 82 somehow? Is he that old?
He's 81.
81.
Well, Bill be 80, but he doesn't like to talk about age because he believes age is all in your how you feel.
Sorry, John, I blew that one. But I heard him play for a little dinner party in a quiet little living room of a house here in Santa Barbara, and he is quite a good cellist.
He's phenomenal.
Still very important cellist. So we are very lucky to have him knocking around in Santa Barbara on occasion teaching. Now let's talk a little bit about the Dvorak, and then we better wind it down. And hang on, train's going by. And the reason I want to ask is, well, first let's start with this one. You know, Dvorak Cello Concerto. Every cellist plays it from whenever, and that's what I want to ask. When did you first wrap your mind and your teeth and your fingers around that one?
Actually, my first year at Juilliard, 3 weeks after I arrived at Juilliard, I won the all Juilliard concerto competition. And they actually didn't even have a finals because at the semifinals I was the last player, and then the judges stood up and said, "We don't need to have a finals. Nobody's going to play as well as she did," which is unbelievable. I, of course, didn't know they said that because I already packed up my cello and walked out of the school. So they had to run after me. But so Mr. Rose, Leonard Rose, he had 2 concerts a month later where he was supposed to be playing Dvorak Concerto, and he had hurt his hand. And so I was living at the 92nd Street Y at the time. And so, you know, you have a pay phone for the whole floor. And I was like practicing in my room, and they knocked on my door and said, "There's somebody on the phone for you." And I said, "Who?" And they said, "Some guy, Leonard." And I was like, "Mr. Rose?" And I answered the phone, and he said, "I have these 2 concerts next month. Do you want to, it's Dvorak Concerto, I would like you to play for me." And I said, "Oh, well, you know, I haven't learned Dvorak Concerto, and next week I'm playing Schumann Cello Concerto at Lincoln Center." And he was like, "Oh, you can do it." And I was like, "All right, I got to start practicing."
Wow.
So I played it the first time when I was 19. And many times since.
And what a tremendous compliment from Leonard Rose. What a compliment.
It was amazing. It was incredible. I was so touched and just amazed by his faith in me, too, that I would, you know, be able to work that hard to get it done, which I did. And boy, that piece, the Dvorak Concerto, arguably one of the greatest concertos for any instrument. It's by...
Get that. Will you have the staff get that phone, will you?
By far, it's the best concerto by Dvorak, by far. And it is just a masterpiece. I tell you, even today, and I've played it so many times, but when that opening orchestra starts playing, I tear up every time. I start crying because it's so passionate and so extraordinary. And he is such a master of infusing the music with an enormous amount of passion and a whole story of what he was going through. But he also never forgets that people like some razzle dazzle. And so even though he was adamant to Victor Herbert, who he was writing it for originally, that he wanted the cello to end with this incredible sobbing lament to mirror the mourning and the grief that Dvorak was feeling at that time because of the death of his sister. I think he then, at the end, right after the cello has just sobbed its way from the top of the instrument down to the bottom and then floated back up, he then winds it up with one of the catchiest, most slam bam, thank you ma'am endings that you could possibly have to make sure the audience goes, whoa! You know?
You realize there'll be no censorship on slam bam, thank you ma'am, but never mind. How about the slow movement? Give me just a few words about how that slow movement works for you.
It is to die for. It is basically the embodiment of pure romantic love. That feeling when you first fall in love and you feel like your stomach just drops out but then floats up, and the butterflies and how everything is tingling, and you just feel like you're elevated, and you just can't keep away from that person that you've fallen in love with. That's what that movement has. That it has all of the passion, and then some of that angst, that when you have that incredible passion for someone, but there's that pain as well, that it hurts so good. He puts that all in there. It's great. It's just the whole piece. By the end, you feel like you gotta lay back and have a cigarette.
Well, Sara, I think you've pretty well communicated to the greater Southern California area and some few stray people in other states in the nation to get my little Bravo, California. Would you tell that person to
I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. I brought my phone in just in case, like, we got disconnected. I could call you.
Another call from Leonard Rose, perhaps.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes.
I'm going to run this out. I don't think anybody needs to wonder whether this is going to be a very personal performance, a very emotional performance. I love it when I love the idea of musicians telling stories, because of course that's what music is all about. I'm a landscape painter as a conductor. You know what I'm trying to say? And this is so important. So to hear you go on and on with such incredible vigor and enthusiasm about the imagery, the magic imagery, and that's what our profession is about. It's part of what no doubt draws us to it forever. The musical art, and how powerful it is in moving human beings. To this day. Who said classical music's dead? Forget that. It's a lie. Here's what's coming up, everybody, one last time. Saturday and Sunday, Santa Barbara Symphony, the wonderful Nir Cabaretti's wonderful conductor for us here in Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara Symphony, Saturday, May 17th at 8 o'clock in the evening. Sunday, May 18th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Santa Barbara's glorious skyscraper, the 1924 Granada Theater building. Beautiful, beautiful.
Such a gorgeous theater.
Beautiful
I love
concert
playing
hall.
in that theater.
A program that's going to include Shostakovich No. 5 Symphony. Get ready to hold your hats on or let the roof blow off. And wonderful Sara Sant'Ambrogio, cellist, performing the Dvorák Cello Concerto. You just can't go wrong. So once more, the phone number in Santa Barbara, it's the Granada Theater box office, area code 805-899-2222. And I can tell you what I'm looking forward to. I'm going to make sure that I'm down there after the concert at Nir Cabaretti's dressing room. I want to see your dad and you and Cabaretti interact after this. Your dad is going to be mush. I
one time played a concert where I could hear him sobbing from the fifth row while I was playing.
Wow. Anyway, a wonderful concert. Sara in Nashville, Tennessee. She spends part of her life in Nashville and part of her life in New York City, and of course all over the world, playing all over the world. And you can see why. Tremendous personality. I'm sure that is all going to be expressed through your instrument. Thanks very much for giving me a few minutes today. Thank you.
It was my pleasure, Dan. Thank you so much.
Right on. Bye-bye.